Well, what's happened with this technology is it's actually bionic man, bionic woman kind of stuff. If you think about it, for those of you old enough to know those television shows from the 70s and early 80s, you can enhance a human's performance. You don't have to replace the human. So 2011 to 2013-ish at US Bank with Alon, we were really short on people in an area that had a lot of repetitive tasks. And this company that I don't even think is around anymore, so I'm not going to mention them, developed software that was really affordable. And the way approvals in Fortune 200 companies are, it would have taken us a long time to get approval to go do this. I had a boss at the time that said, I'll just fund it. Go figure it out, Patrick, which is autonomy is one of my favorite things. And going against the grain professionally is also one of my favorite things. So we went and found this company. I sent 2 operations people to Chicago for 4 days. And they taught them over 4 days to write strings or code to automate or replicate the repetitive tasks. And over a 2-year period, we ended up not replacing, but enhancing the work of 80 people on the team. 80 people I didn't necessarily always have. Life happens. People take leaves or, they sadly fall ill or they move on to other jobs, and the retraining of people takes a long time and it's very expensive. Where a machine doesn't really stop. So that was my first dip of the toe into that. And it was super exciting. And I've been enthralled with it ever since. I think what we wanted to talk about today is from 2011 to 2013 to 2023 to 2025, the advancements in technology is so massive and it proliferates almost everything we do now. I mean, I have team members that where every email gets pushed into a chat GPT or a Grok if you're on X or whatever engine you're using to change structure or format. That's one version of artificial intelligence. And then there's teams, what we've actually embedded here, where you can ask it a question and it answers you in real time. It doesn't mean speak to you. The machine is just responding back in text. But, we're coming to a time where there'll be a shape to the machine. And that's the Star Trek, Star Wars side of this thing that I think have people really freaked out, is like the replacement of humans. Now, maybe hundreds of years from now, that'll become a reality, because I am a believer that TV and movies and books forecast the future. I mean, look at 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea. 100 years before submarines existed, they were writing books about submarines. So maybe one day, but in our lifetimes, the people who are listening today, or maybe even in the future, and me and you and what we're doing at our current employer, Rachel, that's not going to happen. So what I'm attacking this with is, how do I take my limited bucket of resource and talent that I have and enhance it with machines, robotics, automation, AI, machine learning, call it what you want, because a lot of people call the same thing different names. I'm talking about all of it in a bucket. How do I help our customers move faster? Because we want them growing their revenue because it grows our revenue. And every business is really built like that, whether you're a B2C group or a B2B group. If you swing in not-for-profits or military organizations or law enforcement, this is relevant as well, because there's things that police officers do that are repetitive. Think about all the reports they have to write and the legal briefs. I mean, DA offices won't pick up cases unless this stuff, every I is dotted and T is crossed and yada, yada. I mean, you can use some of this technology to get the officers out enforcing the peace and engaging with their communities instead of sitting at a desk. Like, that's a version of non-corporate uses of this stuff. And I think the thing that ties it all together, regardless of how you're going to execute the technology, is keeping that part in mind, is that it is a scary stuff, but you're enhancing the person or freeing the person to do what their real job is. So I think we're going to, ebb and flow through that dialogue. And Rachel, I know you have a lot of commentary on this from the human performance perspective, but I wanted to get all that out.
Yeah, really interesting insights. And I think what you just outlined, Patrick, is that even though this feels very new and futuristic, it's actually really not. It's another stage in the Industrial Revolution, right? So, I mean, in the past, I'm sure whoever invented the abacus, right, got a lot of heat because the people that were hired to like stroke count or do it however they counted things, right, were like, oh my gosh, there's this new invention called the abacus, and now we're not going to have jobs. And then it happened again with the calculator. So this is a natural evolution. And I think we can't even imagine what might be next, right? 10, 20, 50, 100 years down the line. Personally, I think it's exciting because there's more than enough work to go around. And if we can divest some of the busy work, then it gives us more time to focus on the things that are more important. Now, people who don't have a clear idea of what's expected of them, people who don't feel safe and secure in their places of work, they might worry that the robots will replace them. But if we can create a conversation with employees about, hey, if you tell me what are the 5, 10 most annoying parts of your job, and if those would disappear tomorrow, how would you like to spend your time? Imagine what kinds of conversations that can open up, right? So even I think about some of the silly AI, not even the cooler parts of it, but I mean, years ago, I used to spend hours and hours and hours designing PowerPoint presentations, right? Before board meeting, before whatever. And it was moving around those little shapes and graphics. I'm not a graphic designer. And it was hours, usually on weekends or late at night. And now Microsoft has this design feature. You just click a button and they rearrange all your squares and shapes and bullet points so that it looks more pleasantly appealing. That is awesome, right? That's just such a small example, but I think that will happen in many ways. And so explaining to employees that, again, we can't promise, right, that the robots won't take our jobs, but building the confidence and the sense of security as part of a leadership development conversation, as part of an overall productivity conversation, could go a long way. What do you think about that?
I think it's huge. I mean, I'll opine and jump on top of that to say it's a little edgy. In my experience, so not expert, not global awareness, just my experiences, my 28 years in corporate America and 10 in the not-for-profit space, the people who struggle the most with this kind of change are the people who were already struggling with whatever it is they were doing. And you touched on it a little bit, but you could blame it on bad leadership in their environment. You could blame it on lack of clear expectations or goals. But I think confident people who enjoy what they do are usually the survivors in any environment. So as this change is erupting, and even though it's been around forever, adaption's been like this. The technology was doing this, but the adaption to the technology was lagging always, probably always will. It's human nature. But it's going to catch up because you're going to be forced. Like that article that went out this morning, it actually describes how many layoffs have occurred in the last couple of years, and it's hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. A lot of corporations drive, or businesses or not-for-profits or whatever, drive for expense reduction. And if you're of senior leadership and listening to this podcast, gird yourselves. But a lot of senior leaders, officers go right to the end result without thinking through how to get to the end result. The idea of saving money, expense reduction. Code words like efficiency. We need efficiencies in the business. That just means less money, less people, whatever. I mean, that's the quiet part out loud, right? That's what efficiency means.